we've done something that the Department of Justice has failed to do. We have actually sat down and listened, not once, not twice, but on multiple occasions to the survivors. As you saw last week, AG Bondi wouldn't even turn and look at the survivors, let alone allow her DOJ to do their job, which is to investigate. So here we are as the legislative branch doing our jobs and trying to do oversight. Let me tell you, the survivors have said over and over and over, follow the money. That was the one thing that they told us, as well as their attorneys, follow the money. Well, we're following the money, but I'm going to be perfectly honest with you and tell you that we are running into dead ends at this moment. On yesterday, I was asked about this particular deposition and what I anticipated I would hear. As a trained attorney and litigator, once they told me he wasn't taking the fifth, I thought that the record would be full of I don't remembers. I will tell you that once this record comes out, you will see that you most likely will be left with more questions than answers. It is almost inconceivable to be missing the amounts of money that are missing, and somehow Mr. Wexner have no idea. The other thing that I want you to pay attention to, because again, as a trained litigator, think about some of the themes that we keep hearing. We know that there were supposedly these fraudulent modeling agencies that were set up all over the country, and girls would go in thinking that they were going to get their chance at modeling. Victoria's Secret. We know Victoria's Secret was known specifically for their fashion shows. We know that there are reports of girls that went in thinking that they were potentially going in to model. These are not coincidences. There's two things that have been clear, is that there were always young girls seemingly looking for an opportunity to model, and there were always rich and powerful people on the other side, dangling a carrot, saying, I will give you the life that you're seeking. Yet ultimately, the stories are the same. They're stories of abuse. They're stories of trafficking at the highest level. And I will tell you one thing that was remembered for sure was when asked about Donald Trump and Epstein, and whether or not they had been in the same room and what that looked like. He didn't quite remember, but he imagined that yes, that possibly happened, because he did remember that Donald Trump also would like to show up to the Victoria's Secret runway shows. Now, that was a little odd to him, he said, because Donald Trump was not engaged in fashion whatsoever. But he does recall that. He also said something that I feel like we've heard over and over and over, which is that Epstein liked to drop people's names. So he'd imagine that that may have been one of the names that he dropped. Listen, I want the American people, but more specifically, I want the survivors and anyone who is struggling right now to know that we see you, we feel you, and we are fighting for you. We will not stop. If Mr. Wexner is honest about his intentions in helping us, then we're asking him, if he doesn't remember, then go ahead and turn over all of your financial records, because we need to follow the money, because that is exactly what the survivors told us to do. And we know that the Department of Justice is either inadequate or just not interested in doing justice as it relates to this particular scenario. We in America deserve better. We are looking around the country and we're seeing CEOs that are having to leave their own companies. We're seeing people that are having to leave their board positions. We're seeing princes being dethroned. We're seeing all kinds of stuff everywhere except for right here at the highest levels of federal government. Whether we're talking about Donald Trump himself or whether we're talking about Secretary Lutnick, and the list goes on. We deserve better in this country, and we will get it.
Jasmine Crockett just shifted the Epstein conversation in a way that could hit a lot harder than another fight over missing files. She says DOJ failed because it never really listened to the survivors. And according to her, the survivors and their lawyers have been saying the same thing over and over. Follow the money. That means looking past headlines and into the financial records, the fake modeling agency pipeline, the Victoria's Secret connection, the missing money around Wexner, and the powerful names that keep hovering around the case. This Jasmine Crockett clip works because it changes the frame. Most Epstein videos get stuck in the same loop: missing files, redactions, secret lists, famous names, and the same outrage cycle over and over again. But Crockett is trying to move the focus somewhere else. Her argument is that the real story is not just hidden inside paper files, it is hidden in the money. And according to this transcript, she says the survivors themselves told her exactly that. Over and over again, the message was simple: follow the money. That is the center of the whole clip. Crockett says her side has done something the Department of Justice failed to do: actually sit down and listen to survivors, not once or twice, but multiple times. She contrasts that with Pam Bondi, saying Bondi would not even turn and look at survivors in the room, much less allow DOJ to do the investigative work survivors were asking for. That gives the clip its first big emotional hook. Lawmakers listening, DOJ refusing, survivors still waiting. Then Crockett turns that moral argument into an investigative one. She says the survivors and their attorneys kept repeating the same instruction: follow the money. And she says that is exactly what they are trying to do now. But she also admits something important, and this actually makes the clip stronger. She says they are running into dead ends. That line matters because it adds realism. It is not framed like, we solved it. It is framed like, we found the trail, but the trail is being blocked. Then comes the Wexner piece. Crockett says that once she learned he was not taking the fifth, she expected the record to be full of "I don't remember" answers. And she says that is basically what happened. In her telling, once the record comes out, viewers will likely be left with more questions than answers. She says it is almost inconceivable that so much money could be missing, and yet Wexner would supposedly have no idea. That is a very strong political frame, because it shifts suspicion away from random rumor and toward financial implausibility. Not, I have a dramatic smoking gun, but how do these numbers disappear without anyone knowing? And that is where the clip gets even more interesting. Crockett starts talking about themes, not just one name, one document, one witness, themes. She says there were supposedly fraudulent modeling agencies set up around the country. Girls were drawn in thinking they might get a shot at modeling, a shot at glamour, a shot at a different life. Then she brings in Victoria's Secret and says those reports are not coincidences. In her framing, there is a repeating pattern. Young girls seeking opportunity on one side, rich and powerful people dangling that opportunity on the other. And no matter how glamorous the front looks, the stories end the same way: abuse and trafficking at the highest level. That is a very strong YouTube structure, because it gives you a larger system, not just one scandal. It says Epstein was not just an isolated monster in a vacuum. In this telling, there was a whole machinery around access, money, image, power, and recruitment. That is what follow the money really means here. Not just look at bank wires. Look at how aspiration was monetized. Look at who funded what. Look at what businesses, social circles, and status symbols formed the cover around the abuse. Then Crockett brings Donald Trump back into the frame. She says one thing remembered for sure was that, when asked about Trump and Epstein being in the same room, the witness did not fully recall specific details, but believed it likely happened because he did remember Trump showing up to Victoria's Secret runway shows. Crockett says that seemed odd because Trump was not involved in fashion, and she adds another recurring theme she says has come up over and over again. Epstein liked to drop people's names. In other words, the clip does not present a clean, complete answer there. It presents a repeated atmosphere of proximity, name-dropping, and elite access. From a packaging standpoint, that is powerful because it gives viewers both outrage and investigation. Not just be angry, but follow this trail. And that is the deepest reason the clip works. Crockett is not just saying, release more files. She is saying, the truth may not be sitting in a missing folder. It may be sitting in the cash flow, the business records, the transactions, the relationships, and the promises made to young girls who thought they were walking into opportunity and we're actually walking into a trap. That is a much bigger story, and it is why Follow the Money is the right headline. This clip matters because it takes the Epstein story out of the usual dead-end argument over documents and puts the focus where survivors themselves say it belongs: the money. Jasmine Crockett is saying the real answers may be in the financial trail, the fake modeling pipeline, and the powerful people who keep showing up around the edges while DOJ keeps stalling. If you think more people need to hear that shift in focus, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. Because the faster people understand where the real trail may lead, the harder it becomes to bury it in paperwork and delay.